That was a nice lift back there. But you got a lot to learn.
Crap!
You stick with me and I'll teach you a few things.
No offense, but I don't even know you.
My friends call me Sully.
Nathan Drake.
Mr. Sullivan. And Mr. Drake.
Suppose you tell me what's so special about that ring?
It belongs in my family.
Inscribed with Sir Francis Drake's motto.
Greatness from small beginnings.
Just what is it you're after anyway?
That's just a little historical research.
Don't tell me you're buying into all that supernatural nonsense.
You love all this as much as I do.
No.
Nate, these guys are playing for keeps.
Yeah, so?
He would go to the ends of the earth for you, Nate.
Now what do? We jump?
Just don't ask him to.
Shall we?
You get off on all this. Cheating death.
But that's not how it will end. This is how it will end.
Sorry.
Sully! We don't get to choose how we start in this life.
Had to try.
Real greatness. It's what you do with the hand you're dealt.
You're a crook, right? What do you want from me?
I see great things in our future, kid. Great things.
Hello everyone, I am Scott Lowe, Senior Communications Manager here at Naughty Dog, and I am psyched to be kicking off the first in our weekly live stream series, where every Wednesday typically, but on special occasions such as this, we'll be streaming live from the studio here in Santa Monica at around 11 a.m. Pacific time. As we said in our announcement, this is our exciting new way to chat with you, our incredible community, on a week-to-week basis, play through some of our own games as well as big releases from around the industry and some of our favorites. So, we are so excited to be doing this, but, one thing we did want to make clear right out of the gate, so everyone's expectations are leveled, is we know you're really excited about The Last of Us Part 2, and trust me, we are really excited to share more with you. However, that won't be the primary topic of these streams, and whenever it is, we will make a point to make it known in advance. We'll be sharing our schedules at the top of the month, every month, with a full schedule of what we'll be streaming and when. So be sure to be tuned to our social media channels and Twitch and YouTube for the latest updates. Now, this is also supposed to be an evolving process. We want to hear your feedback, and we want to get you involved in the chat and on these streams through questions, and we'll try to answer them as best we can. We have a module set up on our Twitch page that you can submit questions, upvote others, and we'll try to address them as we can. But that's enough out of me. Today is a special day, as I alluded. This is the 12th anniversary of Uncharted Drake's Fortune. I'm not joking, that is 12 years. It's been that long. It's crazy to think about. So we'll be streaming and playing through Uncharted Drake's Fortune through the Nathan Drake collection, hence the awesome trailer at the beginning. But it's not going to be just me. I am joined by 3 members of the original Uncharted Drake's Fortune dev team. I've got Josh here, EP, and John. Welcome, guys. Really excited to have you on for this first stream from the Naughty Dog studio.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So we're going to be kicking things off with the beginning of the game. Before we get in, I was thinking it'd be good to kind of chat with you guys, talk a little bit about your work on the game at the time, what you've worked on since, and what you're doing now. Within, again, reason. We can't talk too much about The Last of Us Part 2. But Josh, if you want to kick us off, that'd be great.
Sure. So let's see, what did I do? It was 12 years ago? Just my brain's just gone.
That's a good question.
I was the head of the cinematics team, so I helped develop a lot of the motion capture pipeline that we were working on. It was a big transition from the Jack and Daxter days where everything was keyframe animated. So Slightly traumatic, very difficult, but we sort of established our pipeline then. And so I led the cinematics team, and I also helped do some of the early story development on the game.
Awesome.
Yeah. I think for me, I was the environment lead. I've been environment lead in the previous Jack and Daxter series, but this was a big leap for us because we're trying to do something more realistic, which is really way outside our comfort zone. And we're dealing with a new console, a new IP. So yeah, it was a tremendous leap from where we came from.
Yeah, I came. This was my first job or first game at Naughty Dog. I came in as a programmer, so we were just trying to get our hands around the PS3 architecture to learn the system and like build the systems out and just get some gameplay up on screen. So yeah, that was a real fun process.
Awesome. Well, since it has been 12 years, it's going to be interesting watching your guys' reaction as you re-experience the game,
Oh my God.
for better or for worse. Yeah. So Josh, I think you were going to kick us off.
Yeah, I drew the short straw. Here we go.
Right. No pressure at all.
All right. Here we go.
So yeah, we're gonna kick things off with the beginning of the game through the beginning of chapter 3, if we can make time for it.
Yeah, all the way to crushing.
Okay.
Yeah, just go straight.
Okay, so no judgment, please. It's
Yeah.
been a while.
Yeah, we just.
What?
You hit no.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, what did I do? See, this is going great. This is going great. Here we go.
Yeah, just override it. It's fine.
Okay.
We were playing. There we go.
Remember that.
So, how have your roles individually kind of evolved since then? What have you been? What projects? How did you evolve from your original roles on the Drake's Fortune team?
Oh, geez. Well, I was the cinematics animation lead for all 4 Uncharted games. For the first 3 Uncharted games. And then I started as that on Uncharted 4, but at a certain point I transitioned into writing full-time. So I was the co-writer on Uncharted 4, and now I've been writing stuff. Lost Legacy, and I'm working on Last of Us Part 2 now.
Awesome. For me, after being environment lead, I jumped into art direction in Uncharted 2. Again, another big jump and challenge as we try to get hold of this IP and try to master it. I started also the outsourcing pipeline, which enabled us to scale our production and bring Naughty Dog's production capabilities to the next generation. And I've been art director since then on all the other titles after that.
Awesome.
When I started here, I kind of went where they needed me, and my first tasks were like player mechanics and just like the rope climbing. In fact, one of the first things I worked on when I got here was the aiming system, which wasn't a free aim system. It was a lock-on aiming system.
That's
and
right.
One of my first tasks was like I had the spinning Sega-style triangles around like your targets, and you just flip the stick to like go between targets, and it did not last.
Yeah, I was going to say, how did that decision to move on from that come about? How quick was that?
I'd say that system lasted maybe 2 weeks and before it was completely replaced. And then we've been trying to like perfect the aiming camera ever since. Since then, I've been moved on to areas like AI. I worked on some of the buddy AI in this game, in fact, and onto like more animation technology, starting around like the first Last of Us and Lost Legacy. Now I get to work on a lot of the core animation tech that we do to like make all the cinematics look real nice, to make all the gameplay systems and like traversal mechanics and all the core like technology features that allow the NPCs to look real nice and player looks real nice when they're moving around and interacting with the world, but still have it feel super responsive and fun to play.
Now, since it doesn't always happen sequentially for people who may not know, how did this, if any of you guys know, how did this scene and level come about? Was this always intended to be the opening of the game, or were there alternate ideas?
Wow, that's a long.
More or less, but I mean, okay. This is really funny playing this after being playing Last of Us Part 2 for testing. Just trying to remember the controls here.
Yeah, it's riding a bike. Just get right back into it.
Shoot the barrels.
Well, I guess a good question. When was the last time you did a proper playthrough of Uncharted 1?
Oh, geez.
Oh, wow.
I mean, probably when this remaster came out, actually, because it was kind of fun to revisit it. Whoops, what happened there? Yeah, I mean, this level was definitely always sort of in the cards as sort of like a good. Oh, and the fighting! I forgot about this. The Fast and Furious combo. Here we go. Right, boom, 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 and then there's also the timing on the sort of the ultra combo that lets you get stuff.
Yeah.
Where is he? Oh, there he is. Oh no, thanks, Elena.
Yeah.
But
I think narratively it fits in, like, you know, so I don't think there was any drastic changes in the schedule that you know, we were picking something else.
Yeah, they're coming on board. They're coming on board. Well, one thing that's interesting is that this level really showcases something that. Okay, wait, I have to do the timing. Okay. Boom. There we go. One thing that's really showcases is that one piece of technology that we did not have in Uncharted 1, that we didn't develop until Uncharted 2, was the ability to have gameplay on moving objects. So this boat is perfectly still, and we're just kind of making it seem like it's moving with little camera rocks and the animation
Passing
of the
waves,
passing of the waves and things like that. But this thing is just like anchored like a rock. Whereas, and then in Uncharted 3, we had that entire sequence on the capsizing cruise liner where the entire thing is rotating around. So it sort of shows how far we were able to go in all those years. Okay, I'm not doing very well at the brutal combo. Let's see if I can do it.
Well, when we were revisiting this,
I did it. Yes.
To get ready for the stream, we were. I was, because it's been, you know, a fair amount of time since I last played it as well. I think one of the things that I found so remarkable about the opening of the game is how much it really does kind of establish in a short amount of time. Like you don't waste a lot of time like over explaining who the characters are or anything. It's just everything's kind of self-explanatory.
And it pops off right away.
Yeah. Just wasting no time.
And it's funny because, I mean, when we were making this game, you know, we were still sort of like trying to figure out what the tone of the game was. And if you watch the previous cutscene and the next one here versus even things in the later games, you know, it's a lot more glib and cavalier about like attacking pirates and shooting people and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But you know, it was kind of what we were. It's just an adjustment that you end up making over a course of several projects.
And shout out to Bluepoint for doing such an amazing job on the remaster for PS4. Like this,
oh, definitely.
Yeah, seriously.
Looks really good for a 12-year-old game.
Having done the Last of Us remaster, I know what it's like to try and take that SPU code and make it run on something modern architecture.
So this airplane, when we were first trying to figure out how to do motion capture and shoot motion capture, we actually built a fairly elaborate airplane set with proper measurements for the door heights and the corridors and all these sort of things. I mean, it cost like several grand for us to make that thing. And you know, it was cool. It was cool to have all the different touch points that the actors can interact with and everything like that. But we got better and smarter on subsequent projects. And now if we were to make an airplane, it would mostly be made out of boxes and crates and
But I'm actually very
poles.
grateful you did that, because the problems we're having like later when you do things with boxes is the scale. At least back then you did it with a proper scale. So we were actually able to like model this airplane, even using the original airplane as a base to create like a believable scale airplane.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
We got to, and we managed to get some reuse out of the set here and there as well. Sort of kept it in storage at the stage for a while.
We probably redid this airplane like 3 times already, different kinds of detail.
He captured their ships. He took all their maps, their letters, their journals.
As a quick reminder, if you do have questions, please jump over to our twitch.tv/Naughty Dog page and look in the modules at the bottom to submit your question or upvote questions from others. We'll also be sourcing some stuff from chat, so be sure to share your comments.
Did you guys make a boat too?
We did not make this boat, not in this case. This was just marked out by stanchions and boxes on the set.
But
again, same thing. the boat's not actually moving. I'm just doing something with the camera.
Good trick.
So one question that came up was, did you guys want it to be cinematic or more like a movie, or did it just happen naturally? Was there like, I guess, in other words, was it always the intent to kind of make it like a playable movie in a way?
Oh yeah. No, that was always the intent.
I mean, it's even started in Jack and Daxter when we were like trying to do that, or putting story and characters in there. It's just that we have more capabilities now.
The whole goal of that lock-on aiming system mentioned before was to try and like recreate some of those shots we had in the initial reveal trailer, where like you get the good sweeping camera pans and like the nice dramatic like framing of the death animations and whatnot. But the push for more player direction in that won out.
Yeah, and I mean, part of our whole goal, I mean, honestly, our goal with this game was just to like actually finish it and get it out the door to a quality that we could that we could live with. But the goal was always to make it feel like a playable action movie, and we sort of made our first steps in that direction with this game, and I think we more fully realized it in Uncharted 2. And a large part of that had to do with the tech that we developed for allowing to move on moving objects and crumbling buildings and trains and all that kind of stuff.
A lot of people probably don't even realize that our process is also one of the things that's unique in like a lot of other game studios, that we do everything at the same time. So we've been trying to make all of these levels and story and gameplay almost concurrently with like a little overlap. So you know, it's a lot of guessing. It's a lot of like not seeing what the final product would be or proof of concept. And we're just like moving forward, sometimes blindly.
It really struck me when I first started at Naughty Dog, just the organizational nature of the company, because previous jobs, like if you wanted to like interface with another department, like that usually ended up going up and down your hierarchy and back down their hierarchy, and features that you would want to develop here, like you just like talk to the person from the department and like build your ad hoc like, you know, feature team for that and like work on it until you guys were happy with the result. And it was really an enjoyable change of pace for me to be able to say like, oh, you know, I can actually like, you know, iterate with like the animator and like a designer to like make sure that this part of the game feels, you know, especially good, or this control mechanic like works and looks the way we want it to feel. And like that stuff would just come up and dissolve fluidly as like the needs of the project changed. And that's when I knew that I would really enjoy working here.
Yeah, it's definitely direct, you know, pedal to the metal here, where you just don't, you know, you're not like waiting for people to come to you. You're making things happen. And I think without that structure, we probably wouldn't be able to ship this game, because it was really driven by people's passions and dedication to the project.
It can be a little challenging. Like one of the hardest things I had to learn when I first started here was the ability to manage my own task load, because like there's like so much that people just come to you and like with ideas and like things that you want to work on, and like you just want to say yes to everybody. And it's like, okay, no, I gotta like learn to prioritize, learn to say like, okay, that sounds great, we're gonna do this thing first, and then we'll organize. But it was also just like appealing to like, it's very easy to just like completely overcommit all your time, because you just want to like work with all these people who like coming in new is like, this is like starstruck, like super talented group of people, and I want to like, you know, have this stuff like come to life.
Yeah, I mean, I remember one of the things from this game in particular. Okay, I'm supposed to climb up somewhere. Where does this start? I think it starts back here.
It's like riding a bike.
Okay.
This scene is also very, reminds me of how we were setting up all these other departments and workflows, because back in the Jack days, we would just like make stuff up as we go. But this time, we actually like fully committed on creating a concept team. You know, took lighting a little seriously, or this was the beginning of it. And this is like the beginning of a lot of things here in the company, where we realized we need more than just how we were running things in PlayStation 2.
Yeah. Well, EP, with regards to the environment, like, you know, how did you go about kind of defining the aesthetic of the game? You know, the team at the time, like, Was there any clear like lines of inspiration?
Oh yeah, we I think it's still pretty much the same. We brainstorm a bunch of ideas, and then we concept a lot of like inspirational pieces. But I guess the difference now is that we're relying a lot on concept now to sort of idealize where we're going to go based on the gameplay, because most of the concept that was made for this had nothing to do with the gameplay. It was just all inspirational, and we are relying on the game designers to provide the block mesh. Whereas now we sort of like collaborate to come up with half art and half design to come up with the best solution.
So when you say that concept art at the time was purely aspirational, was it not even for kind of like, there was no like real look dev or anything at the time where you were like kind of using that as like, hey, this is going to be the look of the game? It was just like
we did all that. We did all that. I guess it's what I'm saying is like because of our staff bandwidth, we just didn't have enough to scale through solving design problems, art problems in the design. But now we do. But back then it was more of like, okay, this is the general look of the level. You have to rely on the environment artist to sort of imagine everything else after that.
What the hell, Sully? Nate, I'm not looking for a
One thing I also noticed about this level and re-experiencing the first couple levels was the nature of Nate and Sully's relationship is very different here than it is in subsequent games. Like it's a little more contentious, a little like there's not as much of the inherent trust, like and it's kind of cool to see that evolution over time, as they get closer and there's like more of that trust built over the time.
Yeah. No, Sullivan's still one of my favorite characters from the series, just because he has so many shades of gray to him. He is sort of sometimes the concerned father figure to Nate, but he's also still sometimes the guy who messes up and gets them into trouble, as is the case with this particular story. His bad deal with Roman is what was the catalyst for everything that followed.
Another question came from the chat, which was there anything you couldn't get into this first game that you put in later games, or did you more or less kind of start from scratch with?
Whoops! Oh, right.
Uncharted.
Looked like a good jump there.
Spiders. We had a spider system that Charlie wrote that we had to wave off on for Uncharted 1, but I think made an appearance in Uncharted 2.
Just
it was
randomly occurring spiders.
It was like a big flock of spiders that you could put into the scene. But animating like that many objects requires some specialized tech, especially on the PS3, where your main processor is not very good at doing lots of little things, but the SPU processors are very good at doing those things. But that requires you to like code specifically for that hardware. So when you get it working, it sings. But when we were on Uncharted 1, we were very much in a let's just get it functional mode. And so a lot of that fun stuff had to be, that more came online in Uncharted 2.
Yeah, I guess for us it was like a lot of the polish didn't go in because of we were still trying to figure out all of these tech. Like this is the first time we've experienced making normal maps and our process of making normal maps. So there was a lot of, every department had a challenge to overcome, and it was a very technical and production challenge that in Uncharted 2 we sort of ironed all that out. So in Uncharted 1 we were just trying to finish the game with like what we have, and we didn't know how to scale yet. We didn't know how this production would end, and what is good enough, because we're still trying to figure that out too. So every department just had to grow up fast.
Yeah. Well, and that was a big case with animation too. Like there was a lot of
it's mocap.
Yeah, there's a lot of protests from the animators, myself included, about working with motion capture.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening, one of our animation leads at the time, Jeremy Yates, he set out to sort of prove that we could actually do this stuff keyframe. And in the end, he did some really good tests, but he realized that
won't scale.
It just won't scale. Like to do the same kind of quality just takes way too long keyframe.
Yeah.
And mocap is now a vital part of our pipeline.
I mean, same in art. Like this is the first game I realized that there's no way we can make another one of these unless they give us double or triple the time or triple the staff. And that was just not possible. And that's why we got into the outsourcing after this. You can see the difference between the first and the second.
I honestly don't remember.
I think you shoot the brazier.
Yeah, you
do I shoot
the from the top behind you.
Oh.
The hanging lanterns.
Oh.
Yeah.
There we go. Thank you, Sully.
To that end, one of the other questions was, did you ever expect that this would have such a great legacy and inspire so many subsequent games? Was this always, or was there ever any idea that this could go on beyond this game, or was it purely just sort of like, let's get this one out and see what happens?
There's a little bit of that, but we saw that there's a lot of potential for this, and it was quite.
Whoops.
It was quite unique in its own way,
right?
And we knew that in the next iteration, the execution would be much better, and we were very particular in fixing everything that went wrong in the first game. I mean, we're always trying to fix everything until now, but like there was just so much wrong in the first game in how we did things that on the second game we were just like, all right, we cannot do that anymore. We have to like revamp everything and rethink and be honest with ourselves as to what we're trying to accomplish and how we should accomplish it and fix all those problems.
It's so funny because obviously this is well before my time at the studio, and from the perspective of a fan at the time who was just blown away by this game, like hearing you talk about like how much you got wrong and how much you wish you could do is just like fascinating to me, because for me, from my perspective, I was like, oh, this is such like a transformational game for the platform and for the industry at the time. So like,
I mean, you always hope that something that you make is going to resonate with people. But one thing that's nice about Uncharted and the whole action-adventure genre is that it lends itself to these sort of like episodic adventures that you could just like keep on going on forever. So, yeah, really, like Erick was saying, Uncharted 2 almost sort of became the let's fix everything that we didn't have time to fix with Uncharted 1 game.
I mean, you can see, like, I didn't notice that until like, or how large the difference was until we started displaying the two games side by side in our monitors here. And it's almost like the previous game came from a different console generation. That's how much we've improved.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because this was so early in the platform life cycle for PS3, and obviously going all the way to Uncharted 3. Like, you can learn so much in that time, and clearly you guys did.
I mean, in Uncharted 1, we were still questioning how much should we add in geometry. Like, we were modeling the threads of a screw, back then, and thinking that would, that's enough geometry, but
hex nut, face thing, spider thing, moon thing.
Yeah.
Hex nut, face thing, spider thing, moon thing. All right, so. Where is the hex nut? Are they all upstairs? Yeah, I guess they're all upstairs. Yeah. Okay, here we go.
Are there any? So we saw the Otzel throwback on the wetsuits in the beginning, but are there any other cool Easter eggs that maybe are like people may not be aware of in this game that you can recall? I'm sure there's a ton buried in there.
Jeez. Well, we were just talking about this before the stream started, but here we go. Number one. One of my favorite things from this were some of the unlockable items that you could get after you finished the game. And at the time this game came out, there was a very particular aesthetic for a lot of games where things were very sort of, shall we say, earth tone and brown. And we were trying very hard with this game, this temple notwithstanding, to like try to get a lot more color and green into the proceedings as well. Is that something here?
Yeah.
Which one is that?
Did you trip it?
I can't tell which one that is.
Look before you push.
Oh, that's the spider one. Okay, so that's number 3. All right. So when you finish the game, you can unlock something that's called the next gen filter that would turn everything in our game brown, and we got a big kick out of that. But in general, we tried to avoid putting too many Easter eggs in. I seem to remember, did we call Sullivan's Plane the Hog Wild after the Crash Bandicoot level, or was that, or am I imagining that?
Yeah, that's the name of the plane.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so that was that one too.
So like less Easter eggs, more nod, like just kind of subtle nod to the studio legacy.
Yeah, let's see. Is this the one I want? Yes.
Space Gun, yeah.
Okay. Okay, so now I need to get the spider. Okay, so now I do the spider.
So when you're developing a new IP like this, you know, some teams go crazy and have like entire like lore Bibles established. Was there anything like this for this, or was it purely kind of like here's the story?
Nope. But it did sort of establish the way that we went about it. Did sort of establish the way that we've tried to develop our stories as we went on, which was that we came up with something that we call the story macro, which was basically the big broad strokes of the story in a form that everybody could read. And then, as Eric was saying earlier, you know, we always tried to do things in tandem with design. I'm just going to push pause for a second. We always tried to do things in tandem with design, where you know we would be developing parts for the story and trying to come up with ideas for moments and set pieces, or environments where they could stand or they could take place in. And then design would be trying to come up with gameplay things, and we'd be chatting back and forth with just everybody and making adjustments as we went along. So we never like wrote the entire script and then gave it to everybody and said, here, go make this. Because inevitably, you know, there's changes, and game design and games are all about iteration. So the story had to be flexible enough to account for that as well. But once, and then, you know, with the macro, we would just start filling in the blanks as we went along. And sometimes there'd be changes that we would need to maybe pull a few pins out of the story and make sure everything still worked. But as long as we sort of had this general guide to go along, then we were able to make progress. And that's more or less the way we've been proceeding as we've been going along. Now, where's the moon face? Where is that?
Kind up there, maybe?
It must be up there. How do
I guess same with art. Like we've been just nonstop doing concepts and trying to get the feel of the game, and trying to inspire design and story. How like we can create set pieces, you know, and a lot of them like made it into the game. You know, a lot of them were written in, and like the submarine on the waterfall, that was like some really crazy idea.
Wouldn't it be cool?
Yeah, wouldn't it be cool? Like forget reality for a second and how we can get there.
Yeah.
But like, what would be something that people will remember?
Right.
You know, and that was one of those crazy concepts that came up, and then they actually put it in game and didn't bother explaining how that happened.
Well, I guess if you do like too rigidly define the rules of the universe, or you know what you can and cannot do, it makes it hard to innovate or do something new each time.
Yeah, just have to turn off that switch.
Yeah. Now, having said that, you know, creative director Amy Hennig came up with a number of just sort of documents and touchstones that were sort of like, you know, these are the elements of your classic action adventure movies. Like these are the elements of like the characters that inhabit these things. And you know, again, we use those as kind of like our guide points, but there wasn't sort of like a Uncharted lore Bible that had Nate's entire backstory spelled out and like where Sullivan came from and all that kind of stuff. All that kind of stuff just developed organically, not only as we developed the game, but also as we worked with the actors, got to know them, and they started to inhabit their characters, which oftentimes informed how we continued developing our script. Excuse me while I push this block.
Well, John, did you want to jump in on the controller, or Josh, did you want to keep playing, or?
Oh, up to you.
Toss it back and forth if you want. Up to you guys.
I'm doing okay for now. I'm doing okay for now. Doing okay for now. Let's see how it goes.
So for every like game, we tend to like, especially with new IPs, we want to develop like we'll go to design and say like, okay, what are like the real big things you want to hit with this game in terms of your tech, right? And so there ultimately always ends up being like a level or a set piece that takes like one of our biggest engineering efforts in the game. So like in Uncharted 2, it was like the train, and in this game, it was if I remember correctly, the Jeep chase sequence. If you remember. That was I think most of Jason's time on this project was making that work, because a lot of stuff had to be built out to make the vehicle movement stuff work, and then like all the script animations that had to go into that. It's fun to see that stuff come online.
The straightest roots.
I know. Can I get this open, Sullivan? Are there red barrels nearby? Then yes. Okay.
It's very brave to just randomly explode things in a a enclosed cavern like this.
It's Nathan Drake.
There's no way this
He
could go
doesn't
wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's funny. Like speaking about the Jeep sequence and.
I've got this one.
Speaking about the Jeep sequence, like one thing that isn't particularly present. What are we doing, Sullivan? Oh, yeah, right. I have to tap
Teamwork.
It. Sorry. Speaking of set pieces, here's
this
one,
thing.
Yeah. Here's one of the set pieces.
Pretty expensive set piece too.
I mean, this is one of the most elaborate sequences in the game at the time, and these things just take so much planning and so much effort to get right that there just wasn't a lot of time. And basically, there's the Jeep, there's that one part where you blow up the truck and it lands and makes a bridge.
Oh yeah.
But like, I can't remember too many other crazy elaborate moments in the game.
Yeah.
So let's see how many times I can do that. Let's see how many
I
times.
believe in you.
Okay, here we go. Uh-oh. And now the camera spins around, making this unnecessarily difficult. Okay, here we go. Jump.
Oh
my God.
To imagine this was pretty resource demanding too.
Oh yeah.
For the PS3.
This is where
You can see Sullivan jumping over the fallen ones behind logs there. That took up a lot of my time. It was making sure he didn't fall through the world.
Yeah.
He got too far ahead.
Yeah.
this is when we first created the foreground department.
Yeah.
We're going like, we need a dedicated department to do that.
Yep. There we go. Do. Coming to a cutscene. There we go.
The slow crawl to a.
There we go.
The temple must have been built around this.
Around what?
A statue.
Yeah, one of the fun things about working with the actors on this game was that, I mean, obviously we were just learning how to do mocap ourselves, but
This was the first project that mocap was used, right?
Yeah. So, but trying to explain it to the actors and just say like, okay, you're in this ancient stone temple, and there's these carvings on the wall, and this featureless white wall on our motion capture stage. Just pretend that it's just this magnificent thing. And what we would do is if we had it, we would bring concept art with us to the stage so they could put themselves into the headspace of like where they were looking and what they were supposed to be doing. But one thing that they also weren't used to, especially for the on-camera actors, is they would be asking like, well, where should I stand? Should I hit my mark here, whatnot? And I would explain to them like, well, don't worry about it. If you're in the wrong place, I'll just move you later. And they would look at me like they would look at me like it was crazy, and I am. But we were able to bring, excuse me, we were able to bring them back to the studio at a certain point, and then I was actually able to show them what I meant. So.
And at the time on the stage, there was no previs monitors or anything they could refer to, or were they able to see it?
We had some previs monitors, but it was fairly rudimentary at the time. Certainly nothing like what we have now.
Yeah. And I guess for anyone watching who's not familiar, when we do performance capture, we have monitors that display a fairly rudimentary version of what the scene is like, with the scene blocked out, the environment blocked out. So that there's at least a reference point of what the in-game result will be in real time.
Yeah, and I would use it to plan the cameras and things like that. Oh, here it is, iconic Uncharted 1 moment.
Whoa, there it is. Wow.
When I played this for the first time, that was when I really felt like, oh, I think we might actually
have something here.
Yeah.
This could be something good.
Yeah.
There we go.
Now the traversal of this section actually can get a little tricky. I was replaying it yesterday. It gets a little hard to get up there.
We'll see how it goes.
Must have come up the river during flood season.
There we go. spent too much time building that.
Yeah. If you could talk a little bit about kind of like shaping this environment and kind of reconciling, obviously the big vista and like breathtaking art and visuals, but also
it's just
game
we've
space.
never done something like as big as a prop and as detailed as it is here, because like I said, like every department was still figuring out how much too much detail is or how much too little is.
Right.
And we've never done like foliage this intense, with.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned to me when I first asked you to be on the stream was the foliage and kind of learning how things scale.
Because we came from a cartoon genre before, right? Like Jack and Daxter and Crash Bandicoot, everything was just huge.
Yeah.
And everything was very stylized, so we weren't used to creating things to scale or looking at that. It was easier to populate things if your leaves were like 10 times bigger.
Right. Yeah.
It's much more efficient. Like,
yeah.
To make actual grass was like we just couldn't comprehend that at that time.
I made that swinging rope.
Yeah. Well, that's a programmer's problem to let us work. So we're like, they'll figure it out.
And I mean, one way or the other.
We definitely got a lot pickier after this game because all of the things that we didn't want to say was like, oh, can we really do that? Like, this thing sucks. Like, can we fix that? But we're just trying to go along with just making it and then seeing,
Yeah, that's accurate. Like, the environment and design's job is to put programming into an impossible situation and then see if we can solve it.
And code it out.
And somehow we pull something out.
Yeah.
And we didn't know that you could ask that, like.
I wouldn't call it asking, but
yeah, exactly, right.
Demanding politely.
Yeah.
No, it's just in the game now.
Strong suggestion.
It's
gotta make
crafting,
it
just
work.
make it to make it work.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing I've always appreciated, like, see how his clothes are wet?
Mm-hmm.
So that happened because somebody took it upon themselves to work with the shaders to do it. And like John was saying earlier, a lot of the stuff that we did at Naughty Dog is very self-directed.
Right.
And, there's not necessarily a mandate to do one thing or another. And I just remember one day I was playing the game and I run into a pond and his legs get soaked up to the hips, and I step out and I notice that the pants are wet, but only right there. Like every other game I had played at that point, like if you so much as like get a splash of water on the character, they're just like wet from head to toe.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden there's this little tiny attention to detail, and I was just like, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life.
I think like
I like this. This is
that's definitely one of the concepts. I mean, I think it's because of how our company evolved and how we rely so much on individual motivation and vision. It helped a lot in trying to figure out this game, because a lot of this is all individuals trying to get passionate about something that they want to see in this game and just doing it, and then trying to prove it to the team that we can do this and we can put it in. It's possible. And then there you have it. It's in the game, so you don't have to like go through so much bureaucracy or hierarchy. You just do it and show the team that, hey, this is cool. Can we put this in?
Well, I've also, like, in the time that I've been here, the thing that I've always been just blown away by is how fast the team iterates too. Like, it's like, seems like a day will pass, and I, look at something, look at, whatever project we're working on, and I notice something that's like fundamentally different and just so impactful at the same time.
Yeah, I think our production here has gotten a lot better and more efficient, cutting away a lot of the middlemen, I guess. You know?
But I mean, you end up having to make choices too. Like, one thing you'll note is that with the exception of a few scenes where it's actually handled by the other characters, Nate's ring on his neck never ever moves in this game. It is frozen solid.
I didn't notice that, and now I will never not notice that. So
because
thanks for ruining this game forever for me.
That's why I'm here. But it was just largely because we couldn't. At the time, the 3D software that we were using didn't have like a really good dynamics solution.
Right.
And also the stuff that we're using for the game itself also just was way too unpredictable and impossible to control. So we just ultimately decided to let it go in this particular case.
We completely switched physics engines after Uncharted 1.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we switched a lot of engines.
Yes.
We switched a lot of stuff.
So, like
Oh my
our
God.
lighting,
Yes.
our physics.
12 years changes a lot.
There's a lot. Like,
Yeah,
the way we
so-
did characters, the way we did environments, a lot of that.
We had
like,
4
changed.
different ways of animating an object in our engine in Uncharted 1, and they were all active simultaneously.
Yeah.
Like the player had his own, NPCs had their own, certain kinds of objects had their own, and then like background objects had their own other ways of playing animations.
It was crazy.
Managing that
time.
stuff was a nightmare. And so one of the first tasks on Uncharted 2 was just getting that house in order. And
To that end, there was a question submitted that was, from an artist's perspective, how long did it take to create a full-fledged environment in Uncharted 1 compared to now in terms of all the advancements with, tools and pipeline, but also, memory allotments with every, new generation. Obviously, with those, iterations, scale and complexity has also, increased correspondingly. So I don't know how much of it.
Well, it's definitely a lot of moving parts
Yeah.
compared to back then, because in this stage we were literally figuring things out, and the tools weren't as mature or developed, and so we were using old methods from previous consoles to make this next generation thing, and now we're far more efficient, and we judge things now based on the scale and scope of the level, and we try to break it down in like 2 or 3 or 4 months, depending on complexity and importance, and as well as team capability.
scale, like the amount of like work you have to put into a level, I think has gone up significantly, but the way we progress our tools and pipeline tech, pushes it in a direction of faster iteration. And so you can see your changes quickly, and so you can spend more overall time like making improvements, but you get to have that feedback loop of be much tighter, and it's
I
much
guess,
more satisfying.
I guess for environments it did take like probably 3 to 4 months and stuff. But like the stuff that we're able to get done now is much more compared to before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, 2642. Gotcha.
Are you all right?
Sully, you're not gonna believe this.
Try me.
I think I found our missing page.
You're kidding.
Looks like Drake and our German pals were after the same treasure. And I've got the map that's gonna lead us right to it.
Nate, this better not be another wild goose chase. We've got to get something out of this trip or...
Sully? You there? Sullivan?
It's also very interesting how we like hired people for this project, because they didn't know we were getting into this.
So they came in thinking Jack.
Jack and Baxter, and then after, and we were fairly like sort of not very known back then when we were hiring for this kind of game.
Yeah.
I think Uncharted 2 really was the one that a lot of people wanted to join us after that. But Uncharted 1 was a different environment.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of I think skepticism on some of like fans' part. I mean, and honestly, even internally, like
I mean, I've been through 4 IPs now.
Yeah.
And every IP that you start, the first game of that series is always the hardest. And in terms of morale, because not a lot of people can still see the vision. And I guess every time we start a new IP, I'm just like always like, okay, we better like.
Yeah, you're building something from the ground up, right?
Yeah,
Like it's hard.
But
to...
it's I think what makes it harder now is that we're doing it at much longer time. So it takes like 3 years or 4 years
to see
now
the fully
just
realized.
To see, So it takes a lot of trust,
faith.
and
trust and faith,
and determination to power through those first 2 years where you can't seem to see what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're switching hardware as
well.
well.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
switching hardware and coming up with a new IP is
a big challenge.
Very
for sure.
very suicidal.
Yeah.
Now, from a kind of narrative perspective, how did the process for this game go compared to, let's say, our process now, where like a lot of the story is kind of mapped out in advance? Like, was there a very clear vision of how this whole scene was going to go, how how the gameplay was going to transition? Was it always kind of plotted in advance, or was it a little bit more kind of figure it out as you go?
There was a lot of figuring it out as we went along. I mean, and a large part of that had to do with the fact that we were working with motion capture for the first time, and we weren't really sure how it was all going to pan itself out. But the goal was always to try to have as seamless a transition out of the cutscene into gameplay as possible.
Right.
One thing we realized very early on is that the memory limitations on the PlayStation 3 and the quality that we wanted to get on the cutscenes wouldn't allow us to do the cutscenes 100% real time. So all the cutscenes in the game are actually taken from the game engine 100%, but they are captured as screenshots and then played back as movies. So that's why after this, there's a black frame, and then it goes back to the gameplay. Whereas starting with Uncharted 4, we were able to sorry, tutorial. Starting with Uncharted 4, we were actually able to finally fulfill our dream of doing seamless blends between gameplay and cinematics.
If you want to render a crossfade, that's twice as hard as rendering the cutscene itself.
Yeah.
And we're already really close to what we could do in just that one cutscene.
Yeah, exactly. But in terms of like the mixing and matching, yeah, we wanted to just have this nice continuous flow between gameplay and cinematic and back again, and to try to make it feel, again, like you were playing a movie. And one thing that we strived for on this game, but were more successful with on Uncharted 2, was trying to keep as much of the really cool action parts on the stick, i.e. like you would be playing it while it happened.
Yeah.
So, while in this game, in that opening scene where the boat's blowing up and they're running around and jumping off, that's all a cutscene. But I imagine if we had done that in subsequent games, you would have been, whoops. I imagine if we had done that in subsequent games, you would have been on the boat as it was blowing up.
Yeah.
And we would have made that part of the escape sequence. Sorry, man.
That running into the camera sequence, I think, was almost a cutscene for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the fact that they were rendered like frame by frame. I had to actually go back and look for something for Uncharted 1 recently, and I discovered all the cinematics and each frame image, which was, and I had to ask somebody. I was like, why are they all individual images? And that's exactly why. It was shocking to me.
Well, I'm glad we fooled you. That's awesome. Sorry to murder. Murder. Here we go. Society made me what I am. Okay, here we go. Yeah. And this was also a huge, this game was also a huge challenge, not only for the cinematics team, but also the animators, who again, they have been working exclusively in keyframe animation and starting to utilize motion capture in their pipeline. And just, but one thing that we really started doing on this game was doing animation blends to combine different emotional states. So like, we sort of had a standard run, but then we were able to layer animation on top of that would sort of be slightly hunched over. So then you get this slightly hunched over run, which is sort of him being cautious. And likewise, all these little moments of like when he's running around and somebody shoots at him, he suddenly flinches as bullets go overhead. All these different little animation layers were things that Jeremy and his team developed over the game, and it was a big challenge for them, big challenge to fit it all in memory. I know that's the brutal combo. Ooh, nice. Sorry.
You're a bad man.
It actually is difficult to talk while murdering.
Yeah.
Okay. Uh-oh, it's a grenade.
Whoop.
Uh-oh. Yeah, if I wasn't playing easy, I would be dead right now. That's okay.
It's all for the benefit of the experience.
I'm out of bullets.
Whoop.
Brutal combo.
Use your fists.
Give me that ammunition. Thank you. Uh-oh.
Whoop.
Oh god. Hey, that was my first good run. That was my first death.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
That was pretty good.
You've done an incredible job steering us this entire time. So thank you, Josh.
No problem.
For your sacrifice.
No problem.
I'm sure the chat is very forgiving and understanding.
They're all saying get good, scrub right now.
I mean, I wasn't gonna say it, but probably.
Uh-oh. Give me some ammo. I keep on forgetting about cover.
Yeah,
There we go.
Cover is key. Well, playing through this again, I think one of the things that I struck out at me was that, like, how much of the core DNA of the franchise as a whole, obviously maybe not as refined or or complex as it inevitably ended up becoming, was here though. Like you still, there's that Uncharted feel is here, and you can feel it all the way through Lost Legacy and Uncharted 4. Like it's crazy how much of it, was established at this time. But obviously evolving over time at the same time.
There we go. Almost there. Almost there. We can do it. Come on, Nate. Go. Yeah, and even little things like this, things that you're experimenting with, like suddenly going wide to get good views of things and really sort of show off the environment art and the scale of the environments that you're in.
Yeah.
Well, I have to imagine, like, accommodating, third-person camera in a vastly much more complex environment than, let's say, Jack must have been a challenge in and of itself.
Oh God.
Cameras driven by animation, cameras driven by script, cameras driven by player controls, and like cameras driven by collision probes.
Well, it's also the camera affects how the scale of items look. Like everything in the world is probably like 25% bigger than what it would be.
Yeah.
And that's always been a challenge. Once you in Uncharted, it's a little easier because everything is something you've never seen before. But once you get into other of our IPs, where it's more real world and you're in very mundane environments, you can see that door is like 10 times bigger than what it's supposed to be.
Let's wait for me to feel better.
Yeah, you gotta recover.
Are you dead? Okay, you're dead. All right. Just another day in the life.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go.
I'm an adventurer.
Sorry, dudes. All right. Here we go.
Come on, stay with me.
Yeah, one thing I am very grateful to about this Blue Point's re-release remaster here is they went in and they took out all the 6-axis controls for grenade throwing that were in the original game. That's that was. I don't think we ever were really 100% behind that. It seemed, it feels a lot better. They just utilized the grenade throwing mechanic that we introduced in Uncharted 2. Excuse me, pardon me.
Coming through, got places to be.
Coming through.
Can we do our particles?
Oh yeah. Oh no, particle system completely and utterly overhauled.
No, I mean for the
this.
remaster, yeah.
Oh
or
yeah.
Did they just take the same?
I think they did a number of them. I know they changed the explosions.
Yeah.
Oh wait.
Where
am I going?
Followed Elena to the Jeep, I think.
Where did Elena go?
Left.
Elena.
I think they also did a good job in the lighting too. Like,
yeah.
I mean,
here
compared
it
to the first one.
Here we go. Oh, speaking of
inconspicuously covered in 3 palm.
And of course, it's like orange. And stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of motion capture stages, we actually rented this physical Jeep to shoot this cutscene. And it was like old, and it had like weird like rat poop in it. And
wait, what do you mean? Did you like drive this onto the stage?
Yeah, we rented the Jeep, and it was driven onto the motion capture stage, and we actually used this for the actors. And once again, now we would just get a couple of folding chairs and some boxes.
God, I wish you still did this.
Well, for the Jeep it's one thing, but for like giant ancient temples, maybe a little bit harder.
Yeah.
But
besides, you owe me one.
I suppose I do. Yeah.
Oh, look at that plane again.
Look at the clouds. One of the exciting things about working on the game was, even though getting everything working on the PlayStation 3 was a huge effort, it was always really cool to finally start seeing stuff like the clouds come together, especially like coming off of the PlayStation 2.
Yeah.
And sort of seeing these little things come to light.
Yeah. Now there's an interesting story behind this cinematic, right, Josh?
Yeah, I mean this is one of the first cinematics that we shot, and again we were using the airplane set that we built, and it was one of the fun things in this one was.
Did you rent an airplane for that one too?
We probably should have. I don't really know. But I was also doing some early experimentation here with like motion capture cameras, where I just had this little stick that I was pointing around to have the determine where the plane would point. But it also just sort of illustrates how some of the animation technology that we had was sort of in its first phase. Like animating that backpack getting onto Elena's back was actually one of the most difficult things in the entire scene.
Oh god,
to do.
putting anything on or taking anything off on a character.
Yeah,
is a
clothes.
nightmare.
Like, and that was just true of the state of computer graphics at the time. Like, clothes were difficult. Like, The Incredibles had just come out and was the first animated feature film to do decent clothing. So we were doing our own struggles with that, and that's why Elena's pants kind of looked like they're just like pants-shaped rubber tubes around her legs.
Around her body.
But you know, we also, when we're shooting these things, you know, we always take advantage of like interesting takes and things that are unexpected. And one thing that was unexpected was Nolan tripping over the set right there and doing a face plant. And that was the take I ended up using because it worked really well within the scene.
And it wasn't improv, it was like a legitimate act.
No, he actually fell. He actually fell. Sorry,
well, I'm glad
Nolan.
he's doing okay.
Yeah.
Now, virtual cameras weren't really a thing, or were they at the time?
Well, they had started doing virtual camera stuff in Lord of the Rings to plan some of their stuff. And I sort of used that idea a little bit for certain things, just to sort of get a good handheld feel at times.
Yeah.
But most of the time we tried camera-wise to sort of stick to more like traditional camera setups, like the kind of stuff that you would see one of Spielberg's cinematographers do, to sort of like give it that same sort of flavor, rather than this sort of like a cinema verite grounded feel that we started doing with The Last of Us.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this seems like a great place to wrap things up. It was like one of my favorite cutscenes in the game.
It was one of the first ones we wrote too. Like, it was sort of like, it was very much kind of like a proof of concept in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I think that statue is the only statue we have in the entire game. That's
In
how
the
much
first
production.
game?
Yeah, that's how much production bandwidth we had.
We just didn't have the time for it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys for being here. As like I said, as somebody who was a fan at the time, and you know, playing this game and revisiting it with you has been like fascinating to like hear about your experience and perspective on it. I trust from a fan perspective, none of those learnings or you know, hiccups were evident in the game. It blew my mind. So thank you guys for being here. I really appreciate it. Taking the time. I know you're quite busy.
Doing what?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You tell me. So yeah, that will do it for this week. Thank you so much for joining, and thank you for everyone for watching. Before we go, I did want to give a quick list of shout-outs to the incredible team that helped make this possible. We, you know, from the set you're seeing, from the tech powering all of this, you know, we've really tried to future-proof and create something that you know, we can continue to grow over time. So I have a full list, so I don't forget anybody, so please bear with me. Dina Bakir, Chris Davis, Jackie Frazier, Jonathan Lanier, Rob Krekel, Arnie Meyer, Joshua Bradley, Grant Vogel, Sam Prince, and Joe Pentinati. Thank you so much for all of your hard work in making this possible. And then, of course, special thanks to Evan Wells, Allison Morey, Justin Mona, and Neil Druckmann for all of the support in making this possible. So really appreciate it. Our next stream will be next Wednesday. We're going to be playing Overcooked 2. So hopefully professional relationships and friendships prevail through that very stressful time. It is one of my favorite games, but it can be a bit of a challenge. So I'm really looking forward to sitting down and playing that just in time for Thanksgiving here in the States. So we're really looking forward to that. So don't miss it. We'll be live again next Wednesday at 11 a.m. So please tune in. And again, please share all your feedback with us on social media. We're looking forward to growing and evolving this over time. So thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.
That was a nice lift back there. But you got a lot to learn.
Crap.
You stick with me and I'll teach you a few things.
No offense, but I don't even know you.
My friends call me Sully.
Nathan Drake.
Mr. Sullivan. And Mr. Drake.
Suppose you tell me what's so special about that ring.
It belongs in my family.
Inscribed with Sir Francis Drake's motto.
Greatness from small beginnings.
Just what is it you're after?
That's just a little historical research.
Don't tell me you're buying into all that supernatural nonsense.
You love all this as much as I do.
No.
Mate, these guys are playing for keeps, yeah? So?
He would go to the ends of the earth for you, Nate.
Now what do? We jump?
Just don't ask him to.
Shall we?
You get off on all this. Cheating death.
But that's not how it will end. This is how it will end.
Sorry. Sully! We don't get to choose how we start in this life.
Had to try.
Real greatness. It's what you do with the hand you dealt.
You're a crook, right? What do you want from me?
I see great things in our future, kid. Great things.
PlayStation